screams in the night, Indian legends, miles of footprints, sightings. What are these elusive hominids that stalk the wilderness? Join us for eyewitness accounts, questions and answers, Bigfoot encounters of the past, and ongoing encounters in the present. Your host, two-time witness, field researcher for 43 years, William Jevning. Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. As I mentioned last week, we're doing something just a little different this week. We sort of split the show. Earlier this week I posted sort of the Q&A and then Jim Sower stories so that we could have the time to do a follow-up with Brenda Harris, and that's what this show is devoted to. Brenda has so much information, we wanted to spend a little more time with her. And, of course, we have a good friend Adam with us this week. So, everyone, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great.
Very good.
Well, I will do like we did before, and I'll just let one of you guys jump in there, and we'll kick things off.
Brenda, I wanted to know what was inside that trailer that was all beaten up in the Investigation River Monster YouTube video from about a year ago.
Oh, okay.
What was that guy? What was that Sasquatch after?
I really don't know what it was after. According to the owner, I believe, of that trailer, they had heard something late at night. I'm not sure what time. Must have been about maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. They heard something close to the river. Where this trailer is kind of close to the river. It was at the end of their farm, their field. Mm-hmm. And they said they heard their horses went off. You know, they started kind of snouting. And then all of a sudden, I believe they, if I remember right, she said that they heard something back there, like possibly banging on the trailer or something. So the next morning they had seen that, or a couple of days later they seen those like claw marks on that trailer. And I believe what they were using that little RV trailer for was maybe just mainly storage.
Yeah.
Storing some stuff in there. I'm not sure what they were storing in there. As far as I know, it wasn't like food for like their animals and stuff like that. It was just like, things that were just being put in there for storage. What it was after in that trailer, they didn't know either.
Wow.
They were really, really shocked to see that claw on the side of that door there. Go ahead.
Let me ask a question. For the listeners who may not be familiar with that account, you want to tell everybody what happened in that situation?
Sure. Several years ago, we received a call from this family, and this family is always having a lot of issues with Bigfoot bothering their horses. It's always like leaving scratch marks on the front of the leg or the back behind. There's always like claw marks, scratch marks on the horse. Also, the hair on the horse and the tail has been really tightly braided or twisted. I mean, really twisted bad to where you can't even, untwist it. So they've been having a lot of problems with, these Bigfoot that come around on her property and bothering their horse, or they would be coming straight to the house, maybe slapping on the side of the house, or like tapping on the window, or going to the front door and like scratching at the door and stuff. So they've been having a lot of activity on this property. Well, they had, that incident there. That happened in the fall of. Let me think here. It must have been about 3-4 years ago. 3 years ago, maybe. That had happened late in the fall, and that's when they said that they heard like a big banging noise on, real late at night, and they're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And they already knew it was Bigfoot that was down there, and they thought, "Oh my God, that's bothering the horse." And so next morning when they got up to check, and one of the family members had seen that claw mark on that trailer. And when we went, and checked the trailer and around the property, we found some footprints also on there, and there was a lot of where it looks like it hit the side of the trailer. There was a lot of dents around that little RV trailer there. There's I believe some on the top of that little RV. There's a window to I believe it was on the left hand on the very end of the little RV trailer. On the top, you could see. I didn't get to take pictures of it, but it looked like there were some claw marks up there on top as well, as if it was. I don't know what it was doing, perhaps looking over, but it left some marks on top of the RV too. Wow. But there was the windows were all pretty much busted out of the little trailer too as well. But yeah, that area there has been, they're really close to the river there, and very active area. A lot of people in that area have seen Bigfoot in that area. As a matter of fact, just before that incident that happened about that RV trailer, the owner was telling me that there was I believe a friend of theirs that was going to be working on one of the fields down there. Well, he was, I'm going to say probably about maybe a quarter of a mile from where they live. So it would be on the north side of the ditch there. Mm-hmm. There's a field that he was going to be farming. The family gave him the okay to farm that land there that summer. Well, he had set up a tent. So he figured he'd just, stay on the property and just, sleep in his tent there and camp out there, for that summer and just, work the fields. Well, one night, apparently the Bigfoot came on, looking around on that property. I don't know what it was doing, but apparently, I'm not sure what time was real. All I know is it was really late at night, and the individual was telling me, not the person that it happened to, but the lady that lives in that area was telling me what had happened to this individual, that he was camping that night, and late at night, this thing picked up his tent with him in it and was dragging him back down towards the river. The guy was kicking and screaming, and apparently he got out. He got out of that tent. Must have unzipped it while this thing was dragging him with the tent. Him inside the tent, and he was dragging him down towards the river. He barely got away, and that was the last time he stayed there. He never came back. And I wanted to speak to the gentleman myself, but he hasn't been back down there since. Wow. That happened. Yeah, so that really scared him.
Hey, Brenda, this is Tom. So when he escaped,
sure.
Do you think the Bigfoot, was it aware that he had unzipped the tent and gotten loose? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know. Like I said, all I know is that he got away. And I'm pretty sure he unzipped it. He either unzipped it and got out of there, kicked and got out, escaped and ran off. And so I wish I could, talk to the gentleman myself. But as far as we know, that's how he escaped. So
very, very scary situation.
Yeah. That was the last time he stayed down there. He's like, forget that, never doing that again.
Brenda, I'm on your Shadow Seekers YouTube channel, and there's probably the most fascinating video I've seen in a long time. It's the Investigating Family Farm, and can you comment on that? It looks like somebody actually filmed one of these things in the daytime.
Okay.
Can you give us your perspective?
Sure. Okay, now this is the same family that I just got done telling you about the claw on that trailer.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The same area, same family, same area. Well, the lady there, I was actually on my way to Albuquerque that morning. I was taking my two oldest ones to get on the plane there. Well, about 11 o'clock, she called me, and I was already on the road way, about maybe an hour away. When she had called me, she's like, "Oh my God, Bigfoot, it's walking along the mesa there in that hill to the south side across the river." She said there was two of them. So they were walking side by side, but one of them was carrying something white. I'm like, okay, it's carrying the sheep. So she said just before she saw it walking along that mesa there, along that hill there, she heard gunshots going off, and it was probably about 10:30 when she heard gunshots going off. So we kind of figured, okay, if he's carrying something, he's carrying a sheep. That's what he's carrying. And this thing must have got shot. It must have been, the people that owned the sheep probably saw this Bigfoot take one of them, and they were shooting at it to see if it, let it go. But it carried all the way across that mesa there, if as you're watching that footage. But I ended up calling one of my teammates, Dave Oz. I had him go down there and film and talk to the family and see if he can get down there right away and, catch it on film. And what you see there is what he picked up on film, on camera there. Now, from what I was told, at the same time, the lady was talking to me as they were filming. When he finally got there, it was these two. There was actually two of them. One of them, like I said, was carrying something white. So they said it was a sheep that he was carrying, and it was walking to the west. As it was walking to the west before my teammate Dave got there, she said that it walked probably maybe a quarter of a mile to this one area, kind of like it V's off. If you kind of know, there's like a V, like a valley. It goes into a valley. Yeah. She said those two, they went down in there, but by the time Dave got there, there's one that was walking along, but that one of them came back up and started walking back the way it came. But this time it wasn't carrying anything, and it was only one of them. So the one stayed behind with the sheep. So this one's coming back out and was walking back the way it came, back from west to east. Now, if you notice in that footage, as this thing is walking, it tends to stop, and then it keeps bending down like it's rubbing its leg or something. And that was one thing that caught my attention and when she said that there was gunshots going off, I'm like, okay, I wonder if this thing, when the people shot at it, it got the leg, because it seems to, if you watch the video, it walks so long and then it stops and it bends over like it's doing something to its leg. And then it would start walking again, and then it would do the same thing. And I'm like, okay, he must have hurt his leg, or maybe that gunshot, maybe the bullet did hit his leg. But it would keep, continue to walk. At one point, it stops. And we kind of zoomed in on the video. I'm like, okay, it's picking up something off the ground. Looked like it picked up a rock, and then it just threw it, and then it stood back up, and it started walking back to the east. Now, as it was walking to the east, and then it walks right where there's like some trees and stuff. It stayed in that. It seems like it stayed in there for a while, and I don't think it ever came back out, and it probably went back down towards the river area where a lot of those trees are. But that's what happened.
No, Brenda, that was an amazing video. You're right. It did bend down, like maybe it had an injury. Do you know if anybody ever went and took a look to see if there's any blood spots on the ground or anything?
We went over there, but by the time we went over there, I didn't see any like blood stains or anything like that. It's so rocky, and also some areas that it was walking, the dirt was pretty soft. So when it walked back, I'm sure that dirt covered up the, if there was possibly some blood stains, because the soil was pretty soft. When you walked on that soil, it just like covers up quick.
Yeah, I can see that. It looks pretty porous.
Yeah.
Hey, Brenda. I don't know if it's the same family. Probably not. But there's an article in the Navajo Times that features you, or it's about you, and you say that at one site that you found, there was a family that had a rabbit cage, and it had been bent open in a way that only like a human or human type hand could have possibly opened it. And then you collected blood and hair from that site. Whatever came of that?
From what I understood, the sample was sent to Melba Ketchum. And from what I heard was that it came back as, what do you call that? It was non-human.
Unknown primate, probably.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I was trying to think of the word. Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that family, they live maybe about almost a mile from us, from where I live here. And what had happened there was that night they heard a lot of commotion. Dogs were going off like crazy there. And they have, they're into like the 4-H club. So they have like chickens, ducks, rabbits, sheep, everything there. And they have these cage set on a really nice rack. And they have these tie-downs, the rubber tie-downs, that are connected to all these cages that they have. And then they have them so high, probably about maybe 4 feet up high. So and then they have the cages on top of the table thing that they have there. And they all had, like I said, they're all tied down with those rubber tie downs. And those are really hard to pull off. Well, that night, these things came to their place there, and they took the cages, and they just ripped those ties off like it was nothing. They were thrown onto the ground, and it tried to take out the rabbit out of the cage. And what it did was it finally it grabbed the rabbit by the foot, and you could see that it was trying to pull it, through the that cage there. And there's only so much just the foot could, you could get through that the cage there, because of the cage. So it's like really small, like little boxes all over the cage. If you can, like like a fence, but they're really small. You can see where it ripped the skin off, and the poor rabbits. You could see the bones and just the muscle tissue that's on the rabbit. The skin was all torn off. The cage, and then you can see that they took the cage and they carried it down onto the farm, into the field, and that's where they were trying to get that rabbit out of there. There was, I believe, two rabbits per cage, if I remember right. They said one of them got away and was hiding, but the one that was in the cage was still in there, and that one didn't. I believe that one ended up dying in there. What this thing did was, as soon as it took off, just from looking where this cage was sitting along with where the other ones were, it had looks like it took a branch, or actually it used the cage, and it was sweeping the ground so you couldn't see its footprints. You could see the cage marks. Every so often you could make out a footprint, and then it led down into the field. This family was having problems with it coming around on their property too. About a year after that incident, they had an incident that happened with their horse and the small puppy that they had just gotten. The horse, their dad went out to go feed it the next morning, went to the horse corral, and noticed that the horse was laying on the ground, and went closer to it. The horse was dead. The neck was broken. The puppy, also the neck was broken and thrown to the side. That happened in August of, 20, I believe it was 2011 is when that incident happened. And I was like, wow. They said, yeah, that, it broke the horse's neck. And they were pretty upset about that. There was also a friend of theirs that lives in the Florida Vista area. She lives pretty close to the river as well. She has, I'm not sure how many horses she has, but she went to go feed her horse that morning and noticed one of the horses was missing. So she went and started looking, walking around looking for it and calling for it. So she kind of walks a little bit closer to the river, and there's the horse, and its neck was broken too as well. So that one, it was killed. And I believe they did, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they did find a footprint out there in that area too, along the river.
Hey, Brenda.
So that, sure.
Quick question on that. Did you see it, or did anybody take a picture of that? Now, I just wonder if it was twisted or snapped. I mean, horses are pretty stout animals.
I don't think they took a picture of it. The family was just really upset, about what had happened, because it's attacked their livestock, just about all of them, So as far as taking the picture, I don't think they did. I believe, though, the one that happened in Florida Vista, I believe she took a picture, but I never got to see that picture of how, what it looked like.
Right. Just out of curiosity, not that it really matters, but do you know what kind of horse, like maybe a Percheron or quarter horse, or any idea what kind of horse it was?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Hey, Brenda.
Wow.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to say another interesting thing from this article, too, and this is something that I've always wondered about myself, but you say, too, that the creatures, they seem to travel between the mountains of north of Hogback and the San Juan River, and you say that you think that they believe that they live in caves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's along the river, the San Juan River, there's small caves along the mesa, so they usually bunker down in those, or they'll go back up into the mountains and stay up there. But these these several years since 2009, probably 2012 is when I started noticing that they've learned how to adapt here to this area, and they stay here year round. Before that, they used to, hang around here through harvest, and then they would be gone throughout the whole summertime back into the mountains. But now I've noticed that they've learned to adapt to this area because of course, we've got the rivers, you got fish in there, and there's, we used to have a lot of deer along the river. We hardly had seen any of those. But, a lot of people here, we have the farm, a lot of farming going on. So they harvest time like August into September, they start eating on the fields and stuff, what people plant. So that's food for them.
Yeah. Do you think that they still spend time in caves?
Oh yeah. 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 They hide in those caves. They'll sleep in there, especially during the winter time when it's really cold. That, of course, they don't really care for the cold, so that's when they go stay in these caves. They don't really care to hang out if it's really raining very heavily. They'll stay in those because usually when it's winter, when it's snowing, raining, everything's quiets down, and so that tells me that they're all hiding somewhere and staying out of the weather. The wind, they don't really care to, but they'll use that to their advantage to go hunt to find some food. So they'll use that, the wind to go move around quite a bit.
As an interesting point, Brian brought up about them staying in caves. Brenda, is there any history, travel knowledge, or lore or history of these things staying in caves, either in this area or any of the areas, in the Four Corners area?
I've heard, a lot of the elders would say they stay in caves. Now, some of the elders, a long time ago, they would talk about some caves that they would stay in, and they would tell the family, you stay away from this cave and that cave, or don't go into these areas because that's where they are, and some of the families that I've talked to, of course, they won't share which cave and where the exact location is. That's always been kept very quiet because they don't want people hanging around in them areas, start harassing them. And so,
No,
but
that's just,
it's been talked about a long time ago, among the tribals that they have caves out there. That's where they stay. I've even also heard where some stay underground. They hide in the ground. Like there's okay, so you got caves, right, on the mesas or in the mountains, but there's also some huge holes, is what I'm hearing, that they have dug, that they stay underground too as well.
no, that's very interesting. Because I think that's a big question that a lot of people have is just where these things stay. Where do they sleep? Their house, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, yeah. Caves, or they'll make them some really good shelters that they'll stay into as well. If they don't have no caves, they'll start making them a really good shelter that they bunker down in.
Going back to
Brian, you're breaking up. You might say that again.
Yeah, breaking up bad.
when police hear of these things, they tend to ignore them. Were you talking mainly about the Navajo Nation police, or are we talking like county police or city police, or actually all the police in general?
No, it's mainly the Navajo Nation, Navajo PD.
And do you think that they know exactly what the creature is, and they just don't want to investigate it because maybe they're scared for their own safety, or is it because they just don't want publicity to their area? Or
it's a little bit of pretty much everything you said. A lot of believe, like I said in the show before, their culture, the Navajo culture. They say some of them believe that if you see them, look at them, you're going to die within 7 years. Some of them just don't want to investigate them because, yes, they're scared. Or they, there was something else.
Brenda, quick comment, though.
They just,
go ahead.
they get really scared and they don't want to deal with it, or they're just they're so their culture just, it stops them from investigating it. They don't want to get hurt, but you get some though that will look into it, that will check into it to make sure the families are okay and stuff. But a lot of them won't. They'll just just leave it alone, let it do what it needs to do, but then that's when some of the family, okay, well, what if it does this? What if it does that? What do we do? So we're basically on our own then, if you guys are not going to help us, even game and fish, they're pretty much like, no, since you guys believe in that, no, you guys are on your own. I'm like, okay, well, if I happen to shoot it, if this thing attacks me, if I shoot it, don't come arrest me.
Right.
Exactly. I'm just protecting me and my family, my neighbors. I don't want anybody to get hurt. So don't arrest me if I end up shooting one, if it, starts charging at me for no odd reason. I'm just protecting myself. And, that's some of the things I tell the family.
Brenda, I want to comment that I believe your first encounter was in 1988. Is that right? When you saw the one on your porch?
Oh yeah, that was early 90s.
Early 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
it seems to me that, and you open the door and there it is, it's standing there, you looked at it, it looked at you. I think that clearly dispels the 7-year myth. I mean, you're still alive, you're still here.
That's right.
I'm not good at math,
Yep.
but I think that was more than 7 years ago,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right. It's true. You're exactly right. I'm still here.
So that's
Yeah,
a
but,
thing to bring up to, if they're concerned about that,
Yeah, every tribe they believe differently, and so I'm like, okay, I respect you and all, but you know what? Still, something needs to be done or something needs to be said. What do we do? That's the question that a lot of the families here on the reservation. Okay, what if it does this? Are you guys going to come and help? Are you guys, if I do this, if I shoot at it and it does die right there, are you guys going to arrest me? There's no, I believe there's no law about killing a Bigfoot. I haven't run across one yet.
Well,
So,
along that same line of thinking, if a human was going to assault you or attack you, I think you're well within your rights. I would imagine.
Yeah.
To defend yourself.
Right.
And this thing's not a human.
Right.
Well, I think technically, too, it's like you could argue, listen, you guys don't legally recognize the Bigfoot as a creature, so we're just going to have to call this thing a bear. So, yes, I shot a bear. It's right there. I know it doesn't look like a bear, but apparently it's a bear because you ain't going to let me tell you it's a Bigfoot. So, there you go.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty much.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, a bear? Yeah. Okay.
It brings up another point. What about setting up a task force that is specifically for dealing with? I mean, you practically are that task force. You've written a book on the subject. You're a consultant to law enforcement. It just seems like it's a real short step for Brenda to formalize a task force to deal with this and set up a white paper, best practices, that sort of thing for people that are having problems with this. Any thoughts on that, or?
Oh yeah, I've it's run across my mind. Just dealing and getting the paperwork and all of that going through the Navajo Nation. Oh, you guys just don't understand what we have to go through to get things approved through the Navajo Nation. It could probably take me 20 years to get that done, to get it approved. It's crazy. If you guys only understood, you would know. But I tell you what, getting things approved and getting things rolling through the Navajo Nation is something else. I tell you.
Well, maybe. Well, I was just thinking, maybe you just, instead of ask permission, you just apologize later.
Yeah. Right. Pretty much.
I mean, yes.
Hey, Brenda, on that point, it seems like when a sighting does occur around your area, like you might be the very first point of contact. And I'm just curious, after somebody contacts you and tells you about their experience, do you encourage them to make a report with the Navajo police, or do you even say that it's just not even worth it?
I give them that option. It's up to you. You're more than welcome to do it. But don't be surprised if your report gets lost.
Yeah.
If you go back and say, hey, I reported this, what happened to it? Don't be surprised if, they can't find it. It always happens. I tell you. So I tell them, keep a dialogue, keep on a notebook, write down the time that it came, what did it do, the date, the time, was it during the day, was it night, evening, afternoon, morning. I mean, document everything and keep it on file. And I tell them, if you do give a report to the Navajo PD or any cop, make sure you keep a copy for yourself. Because if you just give them what you wrote and you didn't save one, you might as well kiss that note goodbye, because, you'll never see it. Or you go back and say, I reported it, and it's gone.
Brenda, I'm going to do just an absolute shameless push for creekdevil.com, but you know what? We have a document on our website. If people go to creekdevil.com /resources HTML, just creekdevil.com, go go to the menu, go to resources. There's actually a PDF document that people could download free. It's Sasquatch evidence field data. It has it's actually meant for researchers or anybody, but it has a lot of the criteria that you just mentioned. Your people could download it. Anybody that has an encounter, and I just wonder if maybe down the road it wouldn't make sense to create a website. You could create a website, and you could just
that's a great idea. Yeah.
Over time, somebody's got to recognize it.
Yep. Yeah, you're exactly right. I'll get on that and start on a website like that.
Kind of like a BFRO kind of a listing, and maybe then if everybody's looking at it, everybody sees the patterns. It doesn't matter if law enforcement agrees or not. The word is out there. Everyone's informed, and they understand. Oh, we've got stuff going on down by the river, down by farm number 10. You know what I mean? And they're like, okay, well, right. I'm at farm number 9. Maybe I better turn on my lights at night and let the horse sleep in the house, or I don't know. I'm a city guy. Yeah. I don't know what you guys do, but so suddenly everybody's alerted. They're all taking precaution.
Oh yeah, that's right. Get something up like that. That way, hey, here's another report. Just imagine, but I'll probably get quite a few reports on that. I think I will do that. I'll start on that and get that site up. For the people that live, it doesn't have to just be out here on the reservation, but different places, all over. But there is a lot of activity going on, on the reservation, different parts of the reservation. Like out there in the Chusca Mountains, people hear it yelling, running across the road, and there's several of them hanging around the picnic areas late at night. And they raid the trash cans. There was a family not too long ago, probably 3 weeks ago. They said that a gentleman saw it just walking out of the tree line. He looked at it, and it just turned around and walked right back into the tree line.
Was this in the daytime?
Yeah, it was. I think late afternoon, maybe around 2. I believe 2 or 3, something like that. Broad daylight. They said just walked right out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Brenda, you have. I just love your site. I'm looking at your YouTube channel. I'm wondering if you can comment. You've got another video on there called "The Bigfoot Window Watcher," and is this a thing that people experience where the creatures come around and peek in the windows? Have you heard of that?
Yes. Oh yes, I hear it all the time. I get a lot of reports. Hey, it's looking in my window. When they see the eyes, they say I was asking, what color were the eyes? They tell me red. Every report that I've gotten, the eyes was always red. They said it was looking in the window, and sometimes it'll tap on the window as well. But yeah, I get a lot of reports of it looking in the window.
What are some of the more recent? Have you had any, like, say, this year in the last 6 months or so that window peeking or?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it was a couple of months ago. This young girl was at home, and they said that they heard something, and they're just blow it off and just watching TV and stuff, and they just happened to look at the window, and they noticed something looking in the window, and they looked again, and they said it was pretty big. The head looked pretty big. The eyes, they said again, was red, but they're not very close together. They were kind of far apart. And so when they moved, this thing, they said they could hear it, it just like moved. You could hear it duck down, and it like took off. And they said dogs were really barking. Neighbors' dogs were really barking. But yeah, that happened a couple of months ago.
Hey, Brenda, I got a question. Because you said in this article that they're attracted to women, children, and the sound of laughter. And I assume that's probably because they view women, children as easy targets and less of a threat, I guess. And I'm just curious as to, I guess recently, not just this year, but in recent years, is that still the case where most of your reports that you get come from where they're kind of stalking women and children mostly?
Yeah, I've heard where there's a lady that could be working out in the fields, and she feels like she's being watched, and she'll turn, and there's one standing, or say like I said the first show there, where people were picking piñons and this thing tried to grab the little girl. Get incidents that still happen, that happen like that. This year I haven't heard of one yet, of any young kids that have been taken or have been tried, this thing have been trying to take him. But a lot of times the young ladies that have I received, they called on or a message, they leave me a message like, hey, I was here by myself and this thing started, coming in like slapping the side of the house. I don't know if it knew if I was home by myself or, what it was doing. And, they'll ask me, why is it like running along the side of the house and it'll slap the side of the house? And the only answer that I can, basically come up with is to see if someone's home, to see if anybody maybe possibly turn the light on to see if anybody's home, or they're letting you know, hey, we're out here. So I tell them usually that could be also an indication like, hey, they want you to come outside to go check.
Yeah.
And I usually tell them, no, you just stay inside the house. And another one of the gentleman by the name of Hoyt Velarde, we kind of discussed this too. What do you think it means when they run alongside of the house and all of a sudden, bam, they hit the side of the house? I gave him my opinions, either to let them know that they're there or to see if someone's home. And he came up with, it could be they want to see what part of the house you're in. Okay, which side? Let's see if the light comes on that side. Okay, that's telling them they're on the other end of the house. It could be possibly that too. So either way, I just tell the family or the young lady, say, be careful. Just stay in the house. Call a family member to see if they can come and preferably a man, a brother or uncle or your dad to come back and go walk around the property and see if they're still hanging around there. But I always tell them, don't go out there by yourself.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because these things do everything for a reason. So it's not like they just knock on a house just for randomly. They are doing it. They're doing it for a reason, which actually that kind of leads to another question as well. As far as the screams go that people report, what is the purpose of them screaming? Because in a way, it's almost like announcing their presence to whatever they're hunting. But we've talked before in the show, Will and Tom and I, about how it's possible that they're screaming to scare the prey away from one area and drive them towards another area where more of these creatures are waiting to kind of ambush them.
It could be, that's a good point there. Also, it could also mean there was one cry that my young son had recorded, and this yell, it's on YouTube too as well, on our YouTube channel. My son caught this recording outside in the back, and he was just getting ready to leave for work late in the evening, late at night. And that cry, I was listening to it. This cry sounded like it had like, it's not so much like a yell or a screech sound. It sounded like a very lonely cry, like it was so just lonely. And that's the kind of a cry it sounded like to me. Now I've heard some other cries too, that kind of like what you're describing, very loud yell. Also could be, like, hey, I'm way over here, bringing more in as well too. The whoops communication. Hey, over here, I'm way over here. But the yells, the very loud yells, too, I think sometimes they're just frustrated because they're by themselves. Could also, out of frustration, so they have this really scary yell. Now, if you go on my channel there, I forget what I put it under, but one of my teammates that lives across on the north side of where I live, northwest, he did a really good recording of one, and the yell was a very scary yell. And I don't know if it was mad. To me, it sounded like a very angry Bigfoot. I mean, the yell, it was just so aggressive. I was like, wow.
Brent,
that
we
was
posted that.
intense.
That's posted on the Creek Devil website. But I'm curious, in addition to yells and screams, another vocalization that these things are that's attributed to them are sharp whistles. And I'm just wondering if you've heard that, or if you've heard any reports where you just get these very loud, sharp whistles at night.
Oh yeah, we've heard some whistles, and the whistles that I've heard along the river is another. To me, I think is another communication for the other one that's way across, because this one whistled, and a few minutes later, I hear another whistle, but further down. I'm like, okay. They're like, hey, right here. They're right here. Possibly tell me, hey, there's humans right here.
So you get a response.
But, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You got it. And so.
Hey, Brenda, just out of curiosity, since you started researching this subject, since you had your first experience and you started taking people's reports, I'm just curious as to the number of reports. Have they gone up as the years have gone by, or have they gone down, or maybe stayed the same?
No, they've gone up. They've gone up quite a bit from the time that I've started. So it's gone up way back. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. Way back then, I've heard reports, but not as much as today, like now. I mean, the reports have really climbed from way back then to now. It's really climbed quite a bit.
Do you think that there are just more encounters, or do you think that people are just reporting them more, or maybe a combination of both? I guess
it'd be a combination of both.
Mm-hmm. And what about the level of aggression? Do these things seem more aggressive now than compared to the reports that you got when you first started, or are they about the same?
It's about the same.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a good question. Talking about the aggression, Brenda, can you talked a little bit about some kidnappings, for the lack of a better word, of toddlers or kids on the last time, but do you know of any stories where they've attacked adults, and can you maybe relay a couple of those stories?
Well, there was one that I've heard of that happened several years ago. That there was a gentleman, I believe he was home by himself. Now I didn't get to go report this one because the gentleman's not there anymore. But from what I heard was that the gentleman, I believe, was home by himself, and this thing just came out of nowhere, and it just started attacking him. And from what I heard, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but from what I heard was that the guy was ripped up pretty good, and his body, I believe, was thrown on top of the home. That's what I heard. Yeah. So that's what I heard. So I haven't seen any reports or anything about it. Like I said, I've heard about that, so I'm not sure if that's what really, really happened. But from what I understood it from what because I've checked this area out. And there's a lot of Bigfoot activity in that particular area. A family, I have a couple of relatives that live in that area. They said, yeah, it did happen. The gentleman was attacked by one, and he got torn up pretty good, and his body was thrown up on top of his home. And I was like, oh, wow. I said, what happened? Of course, they didn't really know what had happened, what caused it. But as far as I know, that the gentleman didn't make it. But, none of that was, of course, put out there to the public or anything like that. And so, but, that's just, from what I heard from that area there.
Now, is that an isolated incident, or have you heard of others?
I've heard of others, but I'm not sure. It's just like hearsay, and so
Okay.
I don't really want to say it did happen unless I know for a fact that it really, really did. But this one, it's just according to some of our relatives that live down in that area, they told me that it did happen. I'm like, oh my God! So they were telling us that people down in that area being really careful and are really watching out, because they live it's pretty close to the river from where that incident happened. It's probably about maybe a good mile from the river from where that incident happened.
Hey, Brenda, have you gotten any reports of them actually entering people's homes?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I received a report. A gentleman has been keeping me updated. His uncle was home with his wife, and this thing just walked right in on them when they were watching TV. And of course, that really scared them. And I believe it just turned around and went right back out. It happened. Let's see. This is July. Probably at I think the beginning of this year or last fall is when this happened. As a matter of fact, it happened twice. I believe to a different family as well. It was just one set of family, then another family happened the same thing, and they tried to chase this thing out, and this thing kind of got mad, and of course, it went out, it took off. What it wanted, I don't know, because I was asking this gentleman, what was it trying to do? What did it hurt the family? Did it hurt your relatives there, or was anybody hurt? And he goes, no. He goes, I don't know what it wanted. It just came walking in, and it's like they looked at each other, and then this thing just turned, hurried, and went back out. And that
sounds
really
like they're
scared them.
testing limits. It sounds like they're testing limits to me.
Yep.
How far can they go? What can they get away? Can we just walk in these places now? Oh, apparently so.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah, it is. It's really scary.
I mean, did it not know that they were there? I wonder.
I don't know. I mean, well, it would have to, because they said they had the TV on pretty loud, and they're making some noise, and then this thing just walks right in.
Did they leave the door open where it could just walk in?
The door was shut, so apparently turned the doorknob and walked right in.
Wow. So this is almost like an escalation. I'm just curious about those two incidences, if they'd had previous history with these creatures, and this was just a natural progression where they're just upping their game, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, could be.
Well, it's kind of like the rabbit cage. They know how to open, in this case, open doors. I mean, turn the knobs and everything, and so it's pretty scary.
It is. It is. It's really scary.
Well, people don't have a sense of security with this kind of activity going on, especially when it seems like it happened at a random time. There's no warning that it's about to happen. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You just, with these things, you just don't know. There's, so many researchers out there that, oh, these things are very nice and they're kind and, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you guys have got to be careful because these things can turn, so quickly you won't be ready for it. You've got to be careful no matter what. I don't care if you call yourself an expert or whatever, but, you still have to be careful.
Is there any indication that these things are vindictive? If you try to run it off your property or out of the house, that they come back and they kind of get back at you?
Oh, they will. It's happened. As a matter of fact, it happened to a gentleman. This thing got mad. The gentleman got mad because came walk in the house, like chased it out, and it took off. And when it came back really bad. It started throwing a lot of things outside around this property, and it busted some windows. And good thing the guy had his gun and started shooting, and finally the thing took off. It didn't come back for several days, but it did come back eventually. And he just really kept an eye on so he had his gun. So yeah, when that gun went off, the thing took off.
So they
didn't come back for a while.
You think they understand what a firearm is?
Oh yeah, yes.
How many accounts of violence do you think there are with these creatures and humans? A violent interaction too.
Man, I can't put a number on that.
Would you say it's a high number?
There's quite a few, but that's it's never been reported. Some of the reports that I have received, which I'm not going to share. But there's quite a few of them. I'm going to say the ones that I've received. There's probably the reports that I've gotten. I'm going to say at least close to 50. I'm not going to give locations or when and where and what happened.
No, I understand.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. No, that's 50 is a lot. You know what?
Yeah.
In my book, 1 is one too many. 50 is just more.
Yeah.
Hey, Brenda, I know that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
A lot of those they're not just here on the reservation. They're out of state too. A lot of these reports that I've been getting. Just to kind of make that clear there.
Yeah. So you get, it sounds like you're a consultant and you get contacted out of state. Do you get out of state requests from law enforcement, or how do people find out about you how do they know to contact you for help and just providing you information?
A lot of it is through me just being on radio shows and sharing with a lot of information, and I usually leave my email address, and that's how they usually contact me, or through Facebook, or through my YouTube channel.
Hey, Brenda, I know that the Navajo tribe is the largest Native American tribe in the United States. Would you say that the majority of the Navajo population believes in this creature, or is it still maybe kind of like a toss-up, whether people believe in it or not?
I would say probably about half of them do believe it. I would say all of them. A lot of them do believe it, but a lot of them won't talk about it because, like I said before, among the Navajos, you don't talk about this kind of stuff. You just be quiet and leave it alone and just let it do what it needs to do. That goes for like skinwalkers, Bigfoot, the little people.
What's the purpose of not talking about it, Brenda? Is it afraid that they may actually agitate the situation, or they're just afraid of talking about it?
Just afraid of talking about it.
Okay. And then Brian mentioned that the Navajo Nation is the largest nation in the United States. Do the Navajo communicate with some of the other tribes, even say some of the Canadian, like the Cree Nation and some of the other tribes?
I'm not sure if they do. Now, some of the people, I believe they do. They, they have questions, and just like if I have questions, I want to ask, like the Apaches or the Utes. I want to ask them, hey, how do you guys believe in this? Or what is your thoughts on this? What does your tribe think about this? So every tribe, like I said before, they believe differently. So it's really good to know, to find out how they believe and how they go about, what do I do if this and that happens?
Yeah.
Get their opinions, each one. And I believe it's good to know different tribes' opinion on that. I think it's really good. It would be really good to know.
Yeah. Hey, Brenda, are you familiar at all with the authors Sherman Alexie and Leslie Marmon Silko? Have you ever heard of them?
No.
Oh, okay, because they're Native American. Leslie Marmon Silko is actually from New Mexico, but I think she's Pueblo. I don't think she's Navajo. But I was just curious if you knew of. And Sherman Alexie, he's from Washington State, but he's also Native American. And these are, they've written short stories. They've written all kinds of, novels about the Native American culture. And I'm just wondering if maybe they have ever written about these things. In some of their books, but or if you knew of any other authors that have written about this in novels or pop culture or.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'm sure there's quite a few that maybe are starting to write about some of this stuff now. Mm-hmm. Because way back then, I don't really hear any of it, but now I'm starting to hear like, hey, I think I might write about this and that. I'm like, write about it. But I haven't really heard of anything yet, on that.
You said that it's, generally speaking, the Navajo and the other Native American tribes don't discuss this, but do you feel like that's sort of changing and that's kind of softening up and they're sort of opening up a bit about this?
I believe so. They're starting to open their eyes like, hey, these people are seeing something. Any law enforcement, they're very careful if they take a report. Like, hey, these people are, it's not a bear. So they. When they take a report and stuff and the people start describing to them what they've seen and what they smell, and they're so like, it is not a bear. I know what I've seen, but they'll take, they'll take some report, they'll take a report of it. And a lot of times does get put underneath the table, but they get more reports of it, more reports of the same thing. People are describing the same thing. And now they're kind of like, you know what? I think we might need to start taking a look into this a little more. And so that is kind of happening slowly. Now it's like some of them are like, okay, this one just said this, but they live way over here. So these people are seeing something. So right now the PD they're like, okay, we just can't say, yeah, there is a Bigfoot. They have to be really careful of how they say it, unless they actually see it. And I know they've seen it before, so they have to be really careful. And I can understand why, because they don't want the people to like go into a panic and start everybody carrying guns and going off with them. So that I understand. But still, the people do need to be aware, like, if law enforcement could just say, look, there's something out there, be careful. I can't say it's a Bigfoot, for sure. We're still working, we need to, check into this more. But at least if they can just tell the people, hey, there is something out there, be careful.
Well, that's true. Yeah. And because, problems tend to thrive in secrecy.
Yep.
And so you're coming out about this. You're pretty open about it. Brian had an excellent point. He actually was reading my mind because I was wondering if there was any books written by Native Americans that either had a chapter or two on the topic or completely addressed the topic, because I would love to read that. And so I'm just curious if somebody has, or this is maybe a hint, if somebody out there on the reservation who's been educated by the elders on this topic to compile a written work on the teachings. That's kind of an open-ended statement, but yeah. Just looking if that'd be an interesting book to read.
Hey, Brenda.
It would.
Brenda, I was wondering, what were some of the stories that, now that we're talking about stories and things, what were some of the stories you were told as a child with regards to, these creatures? Like, what was the tribe willing to talk about when you were a child, when you were young? What'd your grandparents tell you? Things?
Oh, they wouldn't share anything like that with us. They always told her, you don't know. Like I said, they were told, you don't talk about that.
Wow.
Talk about something else. Talk about something else. You don't be talking about that.
Wow.
That's how we always got told. I mean, like my parents, when I shared in the show before, like, hey, that lady said something at the Animus River. What is she talking about? Of course, like I said, she said it in Navajo. I said, what did she say in Navajo? She said, there's a monster at the river. Always got told, no, it's nothing. Just go to sleep. I mean, that's what we were all told.
And that's
you don't talk about. You don't talk about monsters.
When I researched my first book, I always remember, calling around different states to tribal. The locations where the people were in charge there, and I called Kodiak Island in Alaska, and the young lady I talked to, I said, well, do you guys, are you willing to share any information about the wild man in your culture? And she says, oh, geez, I don't think we have anything like that, but let me talk to the elders and I'll get back to you. And I thought, well, I'm never going to hear from these folks again. And about 2 weeks later, the same young lady called me, and she says, wow, she says, I never knew. I went and talked to some of the elders, and they told me all this information. She says, I had no clue we had anything like this.
Hey, Brenda.
Wow, that's really, yes.
Oh, I was just going to ask, it seems like from reading some articles that there have been a lot of sightings in the Chuska Mountains and the Jemez Mountains. Is that correct?
Yes.
And those are both in Navajo territory, right?
No, the Jemez Mountain, I believe, is towards the Santa Fe area, towards Albuquerque, New Mexico area. That's probably, 2-3 hours away from me.
Okay, but you still get reports.
Chuska Mountains is out towards more my area, towards the west.
Okay.
It'd be the west of Shiprock, New Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of reports coming out of there.
And I've gotten reports from that part of New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, folks.
Yeah, very.
Oh, go ahead, Brenda. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there's a lot of activity going up around those areas now.
Yeah, absolutely. We are running a little short time, folks. God, it's so fascinating. Brenda, it's a real pleasure to have you on, and we're going to have you back.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. And any fellas, any final thoughts or questions?
I'm good.
Brenda, it was very interesting, and I especially found it fascinating that the Navajo Hour at some point was actually doing a report on these things, almost like a weather report, only a Bigfoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was good.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, Brenda, just one more quick question. The reports that you get, are they mostly of just one Sasquatch, or are the reports that you get of more than one of them?
More than one.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Brenda,
well, thanks for coming on.
Brenda, would you like to give out your contact information before we wrap up?
Oh, sure. If anybody needs to get in contact with me, you can find me on Facebook Also, my email address is all lowercase harrisbrenda46 @yahoo.com. Or you can also contact me through YouTube channel too as well.
All right, great. Well, listen, everyone, certainly appreciate the panel here, and Brenda, you especially. Everyone stay tuned for Jim Sower's readings, and we have a very interesting show next week as well. It's going to be a two-parter, and that's all I'm going to say about it right now. Welcome back to the second segment, everyone. I had a lot of things going on I didn't mention in the first segment this week, so I'm getting a show posted late this week, but I'll have a couple others coming sort of ahead of schedule. So if you wondered why the show wasn't posted earlier, that's why. Some medical things going on, not with me, but in the family here. So anyway, fellas, what do we have to discuss this evening?
Well, I'll just tell you right off the bat. I just talked to Richard from Sarasota, and he's still experiencing some things, and maybe I'll get a chance to go out there next week. But what's really interesting, though, he said that his latest experiences are when he sees them, they actually show him their teeth, like almost like they're grinning, and then when he grins back, like he shows them their teeth back, it's a bad sign. Like they don't like that.
Oh, because when they do that, it's a warning.
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah. So because he said that, like, when he copied their behavior back, like he showed him or them his teeth. They did not like that. That was a bad sign.
Yeah, that's responding to the challenge. It's probably not the best thing. Now, you can call their bluff, but in a case like that, that's a warning. You know, when they do that lip flip thing that John talked about, an anthropologist. That's kind of a line in the dirt. Stay away. Don't mess with me. And if you're responding to that challenge, that's sort of ramping things up almost to a level of a fight. Yeah,
I mean, because he said he's pretty scared. When he did that, he said that they did not. It was not a friendly thing. Like he said that, like, they were aggressive.
Yeah, I think I'll send him a text and tell him don't do that.
Yeah. But it is really interesting. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, though, is the 1924 Ape Canyon incident. I mean, because it has come up, like, a lot of people have asked about us and talking about our screenplay and everything, which is great. But I might have to correct that incident in the 1924 incident, because there's kind of a flashback to that incident, but you don't think that actually took place, do you?
Oh, yes. I think it did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's everything that, the original people, who actually met Fred Beck, who the account was written. He told the account to his son. His son wrote it down. They all felt that was accurate.
Okay, perfect. Like, I didn't think if you thought that account was legitimate or not.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, because there were. I mean, this is 1924. There were a lot of things that were going on at the time, and I don't think that Bigfoot was such a popular topic at that point that people would just make up stories like that. I mean, there probably had to be something some of substance to that.
Yeah, it wasn't something known or talked about back in those times.
Yeah.
That's a good point, though, Brian. There's another story that I think was maybe it's British Columbia, a little further up. I don't remember the guy's name, but it's kind of a lore in the Bigfoot community.
You're not talking about the Albert Ostman story, are you?
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Right. The Ape Canyon thing, was believed to be real. The Albert Austin story, not.
Okay. Yeah, it sounded just far-fetched.
Yeah, they said he changed his story too many times over a 20-year time span.
Yeah.
Hey, Will. Speaking of this, though, we have a question from a fan of ours. He just goes by the name of XDCS, so he doesn't post his real name.
Sure.
But anyways, he wanted to know if you had ever heard about a story of a 6-year-old boy that was taken in Smoky Mountains in the 1960s, and the boy's name was Dennis Martin.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear about that story?
That was like one of the earliest missing people cases that kind of got publicity.
Okay, so is there any truth to that, though, that he was taken, or?
Well, there's no way to know, really. I mean, it was suspected, but I don't know that there was any, concrete evidence that pointed to how he disappeared or why he disappeared.
Right, yeah. And then also, XDCS, he wants to know, how has their hair, just speaking about their hair, does their hair match their skin, and are there different types of hair that they have?
I'm not sure about different types, but now what do you mean in terms of color, matching their skin?
I think that's what he means, yeah.
Well, typically, and myself included, witnesses say the hair or skin is basically kind of a grayish color, almost an ashen color, and that's what it looked like to me. But hair color varies. I mean, you get the same skin tone many times, and the hair color can be different.
Right. And then also he asks, he lives in South Carolina, and he was just wondering if there had been any sightings in that area lately, and just in general, have there been a lot of sightings in the South Carolina area?
Yeah, we've had a few. I don't know about the most recent one. I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but sightings, absolutely.
Yeah. And they're probably different types. I mean, it's probably the different type of creature than you would see in the Pacific Northwest, for instance.
Absolutely. Yeah, typically the type 2s are in that region.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Brian. That was actually one of the questions that I had, Will, was on the different types. There's types 1, 2, 3, and 4. And quite a while ago, I thought I heard you talk about there's a possibility of a type 5. And do you know anything more about that? And
not a whole lot, but then you got to remember too, there's going to be variations in the species. I mean, and that should be expected. There should be variations. They're going to adapt differently to different types of terrain, and especially if they're not, breeding a whole bunch, let's say groups in the south with groups in the northwest, you're going to develop a lot of different characteristics, from those different breeding populations over time. So, with those separations, you're going to get a lot of variations.
That kind of makes sense, though, because it's the same in anything in the animal species.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, even I've heard like birds in 2 different valleys over time.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, look at our own species. We've got a lot of variation, because of the different environments we've lived in around the world.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just about to say sharks are a good example of that. I mean, there are different sharks all around the world, but there are only different types that live in certain areas. And they're all sharks. They're all dangerous, perhaps, but some are different than others. Yeah. So I think that's it's typical for any species.
It is, and that's a good point.
Yeah. Also, okay, so another one of our fans is Patrick, and he says that he just asks, "Hey, has Will done a lot of exploring and research in the Mount St. Helens area?" And I know that I know that you have. And he says so he's going to be looking for Sasquatch. He's going to be looking for the Mount St. Helens area, and he found a semi-marshland that he thinks is going to be a good spot for them. So, do you have any advice for him as he's looking for Bigfoot? I already told him that, don't go out alone and don't go out unarmed. But is there any other advice that you would give him?
Don't go out at night.
Yeah.
Watch the waterways carefully.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was just going to say, if you get in a situation where you think things are getting a little on the quote unquote hairy side, back away from the area.
Yeah.
Would you recommend air devices, something to deter?
Yeah, take some deterrence.
And also, Will, I was going to say, I know that this has come up a few times. We've talked about this before, but I think that it's also imperative that if you're ever out alone in the woods, and you think that maybe something, not even necessarily these creatures, but maybe a wolf or a coyote is stalking you, then pick up your phone and pretend that you're talking to somebody, because that will scare these things off. Yeah,
exactly. It can't hurt to do it. It's not going to work against a wolf or a cougar, but for one of these things, it would certainly help.
Yeah, but just talking as if you're on the phone to somebody, and that they're, somewhere nearby, that will kind of at least confuse these creatures. Maybe not scare them off, but it'll confuse them.
Yeah, and even, say even without the phone, if you're just talking out loud, like you're talking to somebody that's out of sight.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that, just putting myself in that situation, you got to drum up a little bit of nerve. Especially if you think it's one of these things doing that, you're going to have to dig it up from somewhere inside of you to do that, and do it in a way that's, I don't know about convincing, but tone of voice. I thought about this quite a bit. Yell out, "Hey, Dave, what's going on, buddy?" Something like that. Just a thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I got a guy here in northern Maine, Holton, Maine, and I apologize. He may have given his name, but it's not in the email. He says he's listened to us on YouTube for almost a year. He said he's got a couple questions, and the premise is that Bigfoot, it's not human. We know that, and it isn't primate. Well, I think it is primate.
They are primates, yes.
Yes. So question number one is, he goes, I was wondering, has anybody researched when primates lost their tail stubs and their thumb index to be a five-toed being? That maybe it's a little beyond the scope of what we do, but anyway, there's the question.
I'm sure they have. I seem to remember in my anthropology courses many years ago some discussion of the tail issue, but I don't know that they know exactly when that happened. And as far as an opposable thumb, I don't think they have any clue about that yet.
Yeah.
There's not enough material on the fossil record.
Right. So he goes on, he says, has any primate or Neanderthal ever evolved, now I like this question, ever evolved a cone-shaped skull? Maybe this would help place when Bigfoot came to being, since they were here before the natives, before the Indians. And he's wondering if they didn't evolve perhaps during the Ice Age and migrated. So, any thoughts on that?
Let's address the cone-shaped skull in the first part. The skulls aren't cone-shaped, and the Bigfoot skulls aren't cone-shaped. I mean, they have that appearance, but what that is a sagittal crest. It's a crest of bone on the top of the skull. And that's for large jaws. Usually the larger the jaw, the bigger that crest is, because that's where the jaw muscles attach. So that gives the top of the head the appearance of a cone almost, or kind of a dome shape. Let's see. And so, I mean, yes, there have been lots of those in the fossil record, early, hominids and other creatures that had that sagittal crest. So that's kind of a common feature in early primates.
Well, that's actually interesting, kind of an interesting thought. So the modern Sasquatch, do they have that sagittal crest, and do they have that extra muscle?
Yes.
So that would give them what, a greater bite force?
Yeah, because we know from looking at the Patterson Sasquatch, it has that kind of a dome-shaped head. So it has a very heavy jaw. And the ones I saw and the ones that many people see now, do they have a rounded head at times? Sure. Same with gorillas. In gorillas, it's a little different because most often the males have the sagittal crest and the females don't, or as pronounced. Oftentimes it's more rounded. With the Sasquatch, it's probably not that way because in the Patterson film we see a female Sasquatch with that shaped head. So in those creatures, it's probably, either one can have it or both.
Yeah, definitely.
I got one more quick follow-up to that, and that is, Will, you saw those two that were right in front of you, and I've heard people talk about this. The structure or the shape of the mouth, we have a smaller mouth, comparatively speaking. I've heard these things have a mouth oftentimes described as going way back, very large.
Very large.
And is that what you saw when you saw those two?
Oh, yeah. Well, what I could see, I couldn't really see that great, but you could tell that it was a large mouth.
Okay.
And I think it was mostly the shape of the head, because it came down and was very wide at the bottom of the head in the jaw area.
Yeah. I'm just guessing in that situation, you're probably not sitting there being real analytical. Well, let's see.
No, it was a few moments, and I was kind of ready to change my shorts. And
yeah. Hey, Will, so I was going to ask, how often do you get reports or you interview witnesses that they describe them with footprints as being abnormal, meaning like only having 3 toes or maybe sometimes 6 toes? Is that fairly common, or is that kind of a rarity?
It's fairly rare. It's not real often that something like that's reported. Occasionally, but you got to remember that's to be expected also. That's from too much inbreeding, typically.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions. Is that from inbreeding, or it is a fact of nature that if these creatures are walking around and hunting for 30, 40, 50 years, if they live that long, and they're walking around on bare feet, sometimes I'm sure their feet get tangled up sometimes, and maybe there are some instances where they lose some toes sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, I've got a couple of different cast of a couple of different Sasquatches with deformities in their feet.
Yeah.
That's a good question, Brian. That's interesting because that.
Yeah, accidents happen, and things are just going to happen to wildlife. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard that a couple episodes back. Now, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh my gosh, it's a 3-toed monster. What is this thing? But it makes sense that it would be an anomaly either from, losing digits in the forest or, through accident.
And there was somebody brought up not too long, maybe it was Brenda, in the first chat we had with her. She talked about the Fouke monster in The Legend of Boggy Creek. And in one segment of the original film, they talked about a gentleman finding some prints, and they showed him as 3-toed, and in fact they actually weren't 3-toed. I know somebody who was there who was part of the filming of that, and he said they were actually 5 toes. So however that got in the film, it was incorrect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hey, Will, I have a general question. Do you think, because I know that you've stated before that you think that their population is increasing, and that makes total sense, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But do you think that at one point, maybe several decades ago, maybe 100 years ago, maybe their population was perhaps going on extinct, and then they kind of started making a comeback with their population, or I mean, that's just kind of a general question. I mean, I have no idea. Like what do you think? Do you think that they at one point were going on the verge of extinction, and maybe now they're coming back? Or
I think before we had any real written records, you know, our ancestors, I think, tried to make them extinct, and felt that they did, and that's the reason we forgot about them. You know, such a amount of time elapsed after all of that. We still have some echoes, you know, in fairy tales and things like that. You know, the stories of always, you know, going out and, you know, hunting the lone monster and vanquishing it, and, you know, the hero comes home and all this stuff. It's kind of a common theme in all these types of stories. And I think those are echoes of things that really happened far beyond the memory of the people who wrote those stories. And these things stayed away from us. So they eventually rebuilt their population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Hey, by the way, did you ever hear the Davy Crockett Bigfoot story? I mean, what do you think about that? Or did you ever hear about that? Or
I heard something of it, and I think there's one with Daniel Boone too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you'd think they would have, as much as those folks were studied by historians, there'd be a little bit more of a notation about something like that. But I don't know. I mean,
you know, you think about it though. I mean, what would they call it? You know, just how would they describe an encounter like that?
Well, I think you'd have to go back to those times and see what other people, you know, how they responded to those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
Or those encounters, how they discussed them.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, so well, I have a question, and I have to say this. I apologize. I don't want to sound insensitive for anybody out there that's listening, but I'm just curious, because a lot of reports, a lot of eyewitness encounters describe these creatures as having Down syndrome. Like that's the way they look. Again, I'm not, you know, I'm trying to be, you know, totally sensitive. I'm not. That's just how people describe them. Do you think that maybe that they are mentally challenged in that way?
No, well, in the first place, I mean, you know, when we describe things, that's maybe not something that we have in our repertoire to describe. We're going to grab the nearest things that we can compare to whatever it is that we saw and utilize the words that we do have. And for good or bad, sometimes those are the things that we have the closest relationship to describing an unknown with something that we are familiar with. I know my own encounters, they didn't look like that. But people who do describe that, it could be just, again, that variation. I don't think it's something that's, you know, any sort of an issue with the creature. I think that's just the way they look.
Right.
And again, it goes back to that variation.
You know, it's funny though. I was just thinking of that when I was talking about the, you know, the three toes and you know, maybe the inbreeding. I just wonder if there's some sort of genetic makeup. Maybe there's a problem with, you know, some of them where they're having this, but we don't know.
Well, there could be, sure. I mean, yeah, and who knows what sort of diseases they have that might alter a physical appearance, you know.
Right. With rabies, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be a scary thought, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be near a rabid Sasquatch.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to be near one at all, but if it had rabies, oh my goodness. Here's a question I have, and I don't think we have an answer for it, but I'll just throw it out there. It's just an interesting thought. I wonder how they deal with, if they have to deal with things like bee stings, rattlesnake bites, venomous spiders, that sort of thing.
Oh, I'm sure they probably do. How they deal with it, we don't know.
Yeah, I just wondered maybe their sheer size might give them an advantage over some of those.
I guess you'd have to look at other animal species and see how they deal with situations like that in the wild. You know, if I that's an interesting question because I've never seen anything or read anything about, you know, deer and elk, bear, things like that. How they cope with, say, you know, rattlesnake bite or, you know, those sorts of things.
You know, that'd be a good question if we have a biologist out there if they want to.
You know, we actually do have a biologist. I just need to bring him on the show.
Yeah, I would love to know. I mean, that's a very interesting question.
I should. His name is Adam, also not our other friend Adam, but I should have Adam come on the show.
It'd be a good guest. Yeah. Hey, Adam, I want to know what happens when a bear gets bit by a rattlesnake.
Hey, well, this is kind of an interesting question because this, just talking with Richard an hour or so ago, in terms of how Sasquatch shows its anger. I mean, besides growling, and I was thinking about Richard and how he was saying that these things showed their teeth, and it was not a very friendly thing. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, in addition to growling and showing their teeth, what other ways do they show aggression, do you think? I mean, are they kind of like gorillas, like they pound their chests? Or do they show aggression in other ways?
All we have to do is take a look at some of the witness accounts. Mock charges, certainly. Throwing things, having big displays like when we had Troy on a while back. You know, him and his two buddies were fishing, and this thing come charging down the hill and threw this big tantrum in front of them, basically. Yeah. You know, it's all about showing who's bigger and badder and who's going to back down.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the whole point of the lip flip, you know, showing your teeth. That's to get you to back away. It's a warning to get away from me. You know, this is my weaponry. You know, you better pay attention.
Yeah. Now, on that note, are most sightings that you get from reports, are they basically just walkways? In other words, like people they see them and they just walk away or are they more aggressive in the sense that they will show you that, hey, don't be here, get out of here. And you're interrupting my hunting.
And we get plenty of them that are like that. A lot of them, I think, also are situations where they've surrounded the people. You know, and either it's a mock hunt or whatever it is that's going on. But a lot of times they're already in control of the situation, and you get the ones like these with lip flip. That's getting a little bit too close for their comfort, so they're warning people off.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's very interesting.
You know, that brings up a good question. I've heard a few accounts where people have been struck by these things. It comes out, it rushes at them, it hits them, and then it just keeps on moving. Have you heard of this, and do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have heard of that. As far as thoughts, I don't really know what to think about that just yet because, I mean, I don't really know. That's sort of a good question. It's sort of up in the air just yet. Yeah, I
would imagine because that's almost escalating really, really close.
It is escalating. I mean, look at the cow mine story. It happened in that account where the father and son went out looking for it, you know, whatever was there, and the thing doubled back, or he chased it, and it doubled back and went after his son, who he told to run back for the house, and it knocked him over.
Yeah, that was the one in your second book, I think.
Right, almost as if it was like saying, like, you know, look what I can do, and you know, had he not gotten back there, it may have doubled back and, you know, actually grabbed his son.
Yeah. Now I thought that wasn't the Goldhammer family. That was a separate situation.
Yeah, they didn't. It didn't happen in the Goldeimer thing in Yacold.
Okay.
There were a lot of things that happened there, but nothing like that happened.
Okay, so that was the Kalman story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that and I thought, you as a father, you would just have a cold, ice cold feeling in your gut when you saw this happening.
Yeah, because you don't have a lot of control in that situation.
Yeah.
And for him, he didn't have any control.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I think that like one witness that I actually wrote this down because their encounter was so true. They just said that they literally thought that they saw a ghost, and that's basically how it was a girl. She said that she could not believe it. She just said, I saw a ghost and I was scared out of my mind, and that's what it was. And I think that she was probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, the appearance and the way they move, sure.
Yeah. Hey, Will, by chance, have you ever heard of an account of them maybe fighting each other, maybe over food or something like that? Because I know that there are accounts of gorillas and chimpanzees where they will fight each other over food. Oh yeah. And I'm just curious if you've ever heard of a story like that with Bigfoot.
Yeah, and in a group, if the sub males get out of line, the alpha will take them to task pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet they don't do it again.
No.
Yeah. Hey, Will, what's the longest sighting that you've ever heard about from talking to just witnesses out there? Obviously, the Patterson film was maybe a minute and a half or something like that.
Right.
But just out of curiosity, like what's the longest account that you ever heard of where somebody saw this thing for a long period of time?
I'd say off the top of my head, maybe half an hour, and that's where the creature wasn't aware of the person's presence. But that's really rare. Usually, it's moments.
Right. Why didn't the creature know that they were there?
It was at a distance.
Okay.
Not a long distance, a few hundred yards, but the person was concealed. And I've actually heard this a few times. And in fact, one gentleman I know, a Native American fella, he said he watched it through a scope on his rifle. And, there were some other hunters nearby that weren't aware of the thing, and it was screaming and doing all this stuff, and he was kind of freaked out about the whole situation.
Yeah.
Well, I think there was a show that you had, I think it was back in the Witness of the Unknown days, of a kid, I call him a kid, young man that was at a camp, a youth camp in Southern California. And I think on the last day of the camp, he'd actually gone out wandering. He got to go hiking by himself, went to this lake, and he encountered these things, and he hid in some brush. And I think an alpha male or one of them had stood by the brush. It could sniff him, it could smell him, but it didn't know he was there. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, I do kind of remember it. And we hear that one occasionally, where they might be aware of a person's presence by smell, but not know where you are.
Yeah, and didn't Bob Titmus, somebody else?
That was the one I like to use as an example. He covered himself up to spend the night in a location. He got too far, nosing around Bluff Creek, and the Sasquatch knew he was there but couldn't find him and wasn't very happy about it.
And I'm sure it was mutual, except Titmus was probably glad he wasn't found.
I'm sure. He said it looked like a bulldozer had gone through there in daylight when the creature left, and he was able to get up.
That would not be a good night's sleep.
And I always thought it was interesting too that he said by the footprints. Now this was about 2 or 3 years before Patterson got the film, and it was fairly close to the location where he got the film. That he believed it was the same creature by the footprints.
Oh, wait a second. He was doing this and finding this evidence before. So how did he find out about that?
Well, that area had lots of activity, so he was always up there searching. And he actually was tracking, I think he was tracking the creature, or he did find some tracks. I think that's what it was. I can't remember the exact details at the moment, but he'd gotten too far. I think he did have tracks. He got too far from where his vehicle was and didn't want to try to stumble out through the brush in the dark and get hurt. So he decided just to hunker down for the night.
Yeah. Hey, you know, Will, this is kind of, maybe this is a question for Brenda. I know she's not here, but I'm just curious, why did it take so long? Because it seems like there were a lot of sightings of Bigfoot going back centuries and centuries. But in Indian and Native American tales, they told about this. But it wasn't until, you know, the Patty film in the 1960s that everybody else sort of caught on to this. But I'm just wondering, why did it take so long for people to realize that this creature exists, and it existed for a long time in Indian stories? And you know, I don't know why it took so long.
You know, to be blunt, I think people didn't care. Most of the things were localized. You know, people who knew natives just thought it was their stories, didn't give it much credence. You know, ghost stories, things like that. They thought it was made up stuff. And when people saw these things, it was just localized kind of stories. And I think, like a lot of places today, they didn't talk to people outside of their immediate area. So, or they wouldn't talk about it at all.
Right. Yeah.
And it wasn't until, you know, the original people in the late 50s started looking into it, and at the same time, you know, the Betty Allen, who wrote articles for the Eureka Times, was writing these articles based on things like people from Jerry Crew, or like Jerry Crew, you know, some of these locals who had these accounts, and she'd write these articles, and that's what started getting some attention.
Yeah, yeah.
Wasn't that what was the guy's name? Hodgson? Dan Hodgson?
Oh, Al Hodgson.
Al Hodgson, yeah. And he came back from the war, and his brother said, "Let's go hunt them apes."
Yeah, and Al didn't want to do it. He said, I'm not interested. Leave them apes alone." It was local knowledge. They knew something was over there, but nobody cared.
See, I found that fascinating. That them apes, like, you know, we're talking about them dogs or them coyotes.
Yeah.
Them apes.
Yeah.
and some of the native friends that I've had on the show, you know, like Chris, you know, in Alberta, they talk about, you know, they knew about these things, and it was just matter of fact to them.
Yeah.
And when outside people, you know, came around, they just didn't want to share that stuff.
Well, that was kind of the story with, I think, the occult, or part of it, wasn't it, that the natives, and you said in the book, they knew about this, and they couldn't be persuaded for nothing to go in certain areas.
Well, there was a book, I've got a copy of it someplace. It's called Wanderings of an Artist, written by a man named Paul Kane. He did work for the Hudson's Bay Company, and I think, like I said off the top of my head, it's around 1840. He was in southern Washington, and at Mount St. Helens was actually in the process of a small eruption at the time, and he was trying to get the local natives to take him up there on the Lewis River, and they wouldn't have any part of it. They said there were cannibal giants that lived up there, so he couldn't bribe anybody to take him up there. So yeah, there was lots of stuff like that.
Cannibal giants. There was a story I heard. Same thing. They use the same terminology. Somewhere up in Alaska, it may have been on one of the islands, that the local natives up there would not go, and they said, "No, that's where the cannibal giants live." And I want your opinion on this. The markings, they would take a tree like a cedar tree, a dead cedar tree, turn it upside down and jam it in the ground. And this cedar tree, and I've seen pictures, there's no tools, no equipment. Equipment couldn't get there anyway. These trees got to weigh thousands of pounds, or quite a bit. You take a cedar stump and it's 20 feet tall, flip it upside down, jam it in the ground. Have you heard of this? And do you have do you think it's legit?
I don't really know what to think about that stuff, to be honest. I mean, I'd have to think of a practical reason they'd do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was territory marking or something.
I was going to go back just a second. I pulled out my a copy of Haunted Valley, and in the beginning, I when I changed it and added things to it, I put a couple of items in there, and it was about that area. The first one was from March 26, 1847. The following passage is from page 136 of a book by Paul Kane titled Wanderings of an Artist Among the Indians of North America. The quote is, "When we arrived at the mouth of the Cattle Poodle River, modern-day Lewis River, 26 miles from Fort Vancouver, I stopped to make a sketch of the volcano Mount St. Helens. Distance, I suppose, about 30 or 40 miles. The mountain has never been visited by either whites or Indians. The latter assert that it is inhabited by a race of beings of a different species who are cannibals, and whom they hold in great dread. They also say that there is a lake at its base, which I'm sure was Spirit Lake, with a very extraordinary kind of fish in it." It goes on to say, these superstitions are taken from a statement of a man who say they went to the mountain with another who was eaten by the skookums or evil genie. And in 1901, the name Yakult comes from the Klickitat word, and I hope I don't butcher this, Yalakolb, which means haunted place or place of evil spirits. Nobody knows exactly why the Native Americans decided to call it that, but an early settler by the name of J.P. Banzer in a 1901 account described a massacre that could have been the source. It says, let me take a look at this real quick here. Well, Native Americans have long told a story about a group of children that vanished along a path through the woods that surrounded the town. Said Jeff Davis, a historian and author of several books about the hauntings of the Pacific Northwest. In the fall, in the hills around Yakult, the story goes that the kids went berry picking, and a spirit took them all, and that whole generation disappeared.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's based on kind of a creepy story, really.
Yeah, but Will, even going back around that time period that you're talking about, the Teddy Roosevelt story, the Bowman story, is really, really scary, and it begs the question, like, he would not have made that story up just to screw with people. I mean,
no, he went around and collected stories.
I mean,
that's on one of his trips through the West, and he wrote those books by the stories he collected.
And that's a very, very scary story about he what was the story? Like, one guy and his friend, it was two trappers. They were trappers. They were hunting for traps, and then all of a sudden they had some experiences with this creature, and it was almost kind of a warning to them.
Well, I think it was the first night. Well, they left the camp to look at the area, and they made a lean-to. And when they came back, the lean-to was knocked over. Their stuff had been gone through, and then they saw these footprints in the mud, and they just thought it was a bear. So they put the lean-to back together. And that evening, one of the guys was looking at the footprints, and he says, "Hey, this bear has been walking on 2 feet." And the other guy didn't think much of it. And then I guess when he did. They went to sleep that night. Sometime in the middle of the night, they felt the presence of this thing, and they saw this big looming shape outside of the lean-to, and they shot at it, and apparently hit it, and it took off, and they could hear it across the creek most of the night, making these weird noises and stuff. And then he looked at the tracks in the daytime, and the other guy says, well, the bear did look like it was walking on two legs, which, they thought it was odd, but, and then, the story progressed where, I think their lean-to was knocked down again and some other stuff happened. So they decided to leave and it ended up they got separated. And the one guy was killed and the other one took off scared to death.
Well, not only was he killed, but didn't his neck was snapped?
He said it looked like he's partnered, sat down on a big spruce log with his back to the trees. And and there were four great fang marks in his neck.
Yeah.
And then the thing had rolled across his body with apparent glee numerous times.
Yeah. So I mean, so the point is though that Teddy Roosevelt, the president of the United States, he wouldn't make, he was not bullshitting. He had heard a lot of stories about that. And I mean, it is really scary when you think about like that area.
Brian, a follow-up to that is, Teddy Roosevelt, I can't remember the name of the book, but he included it. If it was just a fanciful story, it would have been the only one in that book.
Yeah.
And as I recall, I heard somewhere that when he was interviewing Bauman, talking to him, so he talked to the second guy that was there.
Yeah, he was an old man.
He was an old man, and he was still shook up.
Yeah, he said apparently it happened when he was a young man, but he was an old man when he wrote the story down. And in his book, it was Wilderness Hunter, and I've got a copy of that somewhere here. But it's only a couple of pages in the book. It's a fairly thick book. I mean, there's just a lot of different kinds of stories in there. He considered that one like a ghost story or a goblin story. So he didn't really, think a lot of it. I think he probably thought it was an interesting piece for the book, but beyond that, he probably didn't think a whole lot about it. Now, that was Idaho, too. That wasn't the Mount St. Helens area.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Idaho, yeah. Hey, so Will, let me ask you, are there any accounts of them, because we always hear about them throwing rocks from various locations. Are there any accounts of them throwing rocks from a long distance, like let's say like 200 yards or more?
I don't know offhand. Usually it's relatively close.
Yeah, it just kind of, it would be interesting because it might seem that if they think that somebody is interrupting their hunting and they don't want to necessarily kill them or eat them, they just want to like send a message, they might just throw a rock, for a certain distance and just say, hey, get the hell out of here. We're about to hunt or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Just about all of them I've heard were relatively close. I mean, within 50, 60 feet, something like that.
What about them swinging their arms? Are all the accounts that you have about them swinging their arms when they move, or is that just a genetic thing?
That's a good question. They're probably like us. I mean, I think it's sort of now it's interesting with humans. Now, something I took my, because I ended up majoring in psychology, and one of the things they talked about, at least with humans, a sign of mental issues is when somebody walks without swinging their arms. And we've all probably seen people like that on occasion. But that's one of the indicators. Now, whether it's that case with these creatures or not, I don't know, because I think every time I've talked to someone, they're swinging their arms when they're moving, like we see in the Patterson film.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, you see it's almost like a balancing.
Yeah, I think it's a natural movement of a biped.
Yeah, but Will, you've talked in the past about this though. You think that Patty was perhaps protecting her children by walking away, though.
Well, I thought that originally, but as I gained information over the years, that early thinking kind of changed to where because there, at least in the immediate area, there wasn't any sign of young ones. We do know there were 2 larger Sasquatches in the area because of the tracks found, a couple, 2-3 weeks prior to Patterson and Gilman going there. So I sort of lean now towards the, luring them into an ambush situation than protecting young ones.
Okay, but just what you said about them perhaps leading them to an ambush. Was there a lot of evidence though before that, in terms of footprints and things like that you maybe learned after the Patterson sighting?
No,
that led you to believe that.
In that particular incident, there were only tracks of the 3, and they were all adults. The Patterson Sasquatch was actually the smallest of the 3 sets. The tracks were, as far as I know, only found one time before. That was about a month before they got the film. Let me think, maybe a little earlier than that, because they were there. They were at the location just about 3 weeks, and so yeah, it was probably 5 weeks or so before that when the first track find was noticed, and that was by the logging crew. They found the 3 sets on the road. Green and Hinden flew down with a dog handler. It rained, so the tracks weren't any good by the time they got there. So they went back, and then Al Hodgson called and talked to Mrs. Patterson, and then those 2 guys went down.
Yeah. And I know that, Tom could talk about this as well, because he actually looked up the video clip with Bob Gimlin. But you know that Bob Gimlin was offered, I think it was like $1 million or $2 million.
No, it's $1 million.
Yeah, to say that it was a hoax. And and then Bob Gimlin replied back. He said, like, hey, listen, I'd love to have your money, but what I saw was real.
Yeah, you know what you saw.
Yeah, he said, I know what I saw, and it's not a fake.
Well,
right.
And it was his character that came out. The story that I was watching, the guy who offered him the $1 million, he went back to his producers and said, hey, listen, I'm going to do this. I'm 99% sure what he's going to say, but just in case, I want to be able to hand him a check for $1 million. Are you guys ready with that? And they discussed it, and they said, okay, go for it. So he goes up to him and he says, all right, Bob, listen, this is your chance. And he didn't have a lot of money. He was like a lot of us, he's struggling. And he said, this is your chance to set the record straight. If this didn't happen, if this was a hoax, if you say so right now and just tell us the truth, I'm going to give you $1 million. And he said Bob's character was such that he didn't even skip a beat. He goes, hey, I would love to have your money, but here, let me just tell you again what really happened.
Right.
And I thought that was really, really cool. This is a guy that, he's like, okay, here, go ahead and keep your money. Let me tell you what really happened.
And there's too many people today that try to read in things that were going on back then with no connection to any of that.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
I didn't have a great deal of connection, but I got to listen to the original people who were involved in some of that stuff and hear about the people who were in the area and all those things. And just listening to that, you knew that it wasn't fake.
Right. Exactly. What's really interesting, though, is that a lot of these videos that come out with, alien autopsy and things like that, a lot of times they come out as being, they're real, and then everybody knows that they're fake.
Right.
but the interesting thing about the Patterson film is that everybody thought initially, it's fake. But actually, as you do science and you look at the, for example, the muscle movements in the creature, and you look at the footprints, that when she lifts up her foot, I think it's in frame like 82 or something like that, you could see that there are clearly toes there. Mm-hmm. The more that you analyze it, the more that it seems legitimate. So it's kind of the opposite of a lot of these like fake science.
Right. As time goes by and science, new science is applied to it, the more it's proven to be real.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and it has been studied second only to the Zapruder film.
Mm-hmm.
It's been studied to death.
Yeah.
So if there was any hoaxery, any fakery,
It would have been found out a long time ago.
yeah. And the guy who said, he said, "Oh, it was me." Like, okay, great. Well, could we see the suit? Kind of nice looking suit. Well,
Yeah.
No
Couldn't
such,
find it.
such thing.
yeah. Didn't really know where, and he couldn't locate the spot where it took place. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's all baloney. His
Oh,
comment.
You know,
well,
One thing about that film that I've wondered about is, did they have an advantage of finding this creature because they're on horseback?
I think so.
You do or don't?
Well, I do, because here's the reason. With deer and elk moving on 4 feet, that's a distinctive sound. And especially if a creature like it is hunting those animals, it's going to be less likely to flee, maybe thinking that it's going to turn something to its advantage. Now, there's a couple ways to look at it. I mean, those guys were there 3 weeks. And I'm sure they probably knew that they were there. Either the sound masked a biped, i.e. Patterson Gimlin, or they knew they were coming, and that's the reason the female was out in the open and stood there waiting. And it was an intentional situation where they were going to try to draw one or both men into an ambush. See, when you think about the behavior, it's really odd. I mean, they would have known that they were in the area, being there 3 weeks.
Will, that is so interesting that you just said that. I actually wonder, do you think that the Patterson film, like, everybody thinks that it was just, they caught this creature, but do you think that the whole thing was almost planned by the creatures? Like, they wanted Patterson
I
to
suspect it. I suspect it, yeah, more and more thinking about it lately, especially knowing the things I know about these things, and just looking at what was going on. I mean, they don't just plop themselves out in the middle of the open for no reason. And then it could have disappeared, but it didn't. It walked purposely across an open area and actually turned to look back, like it was making sure that they were there or hoping it was following it, which Patterson did for a bit.
I mean, oh my God, that's so true, that these creatures are way more smarter than we
correct.
give them credit for.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing might have been an intentional meeting.
Yeah.
It's when you apply logic and reason to this situation, and it kind of makes sense that would be a model that would fit everything that we saw in the film.
That's my suspicion anyway.
Yeah.
Well, fellas, we're running short on time. Any final questions or thoughts before we wrap up?
I think that's basically it for me.
Yeah, that's it for me. It was a good discussion tonight.
Great discussion, fellas. Well, listen, everybody. We're going to be putting out 2 very interesting shows. The next 2, we'll just let those be a secret for a bit. So I'm going to put those out on Podbean together. Since we're late on this one, I'll put those together at the same time. They won't come out on YouTube that soon, but and we've got some other interesting folks coming up too, so stay tuned for all that, and stay tuned for Jim's reading in the next segment.
Welcome. This is a series of 3 stories being brought to you by William Jevning and being narrated by me, Jim Sower. Story number 1. Boston Daily Times, Monday morning, April 1st, 1839. Wild man captured with 2 cubs. When will wonder cease? Robert Lincoln, Esquire, agent of the New York Western Lumber Company, has just returned from the St. Peter's River, near the head of steamship navigation on the upper Mississippi, bringing with him a living American orangutan, or wild man of the woods, with 2 small cubs, supposed to be about 3 months old. Mr. Lincoln informs us that he went out to the Northwest as agent of the New York Lumber Company in July last, with a view to establish extensive sawmills on the pine lands near the Falls of St. Anthony, and he has given us a detail of the operations of the company and the circumstances which led to the capture of the extraordinary creatures mentioned above. Those who are acquainted with the leading features of the valley of the Mississippi are aware that there is little or no pine timber throughout the states of Illinois and Missouri, or in the extensive territories of Wisconsin and Iowa. The inhabitants of that region are obliged to use oak and walnut for common building purposes, and the labor of working such materials is very great. The greatest portion of the pine timber that finds its way into the upper part of the valley is floated down the Ohio, and from thence carried up the Mississippi and Illinois rivers by steamboats. The most ordinary kind of pine timber is worth $60 per thousand in any part of Illinois or the territories. In New England, the same quality sells for about half that sum. There are some very extensive and immensely valuable pine lands near the Falls of St. Anthony on the upper Mississippi, but until recently they have been in the possession of the Sac and Fox Indians. In the summer of 1838, a treaty was ratified with these Indians, by which they ceded the whole of their pine lands to the United States. The ceremonies for this treaty were performed at Fort Snelling about the 1st of July last. Captain Marryat, the famous English novelist, was then on the upper Mississippi, and was present to witness the war dances on the occasion, which, it is said, were conducted with unusual splendor. He also spent several days among the Indians, and by the assistance of the American officers at Fort Snelling, obtained a large collection of ornaments and curiosities. Some shrewd men at Albany and New York, who knew that the treaty referred to was about to be ratified, and who were aware also of the value of the timber, formed a company with a substantial capital and engaged a large number of enterprising mechanics and laborers to go out and establish sawmills for cutting timber on the St. Peters. They rightly supposed that the land would not come into market, as the phrase is, for several years, as it is worth but little except for timber. Those who wish to obtain land for cultivation go into the more fertile parts of the territories. Companies may therefore claim land, establish mills, and cut off the timber wherever they can find it, without fee or license. The timber may then be floated down the Mississippi in rafts for a mere trifle, and sold at the highest prices anywhere on the river. The New York Company sent out their expedition in July last. The workmen and laborers, with the principal part of the machinery, went by way of New Orleans, and at that city they chartered a steamboat to proceed up the Mississippi. The whole business was under the direction of Mr. Lincoln. They had on board all the necessary tools and saws, together with the apparatus for a grist mill, oxen, horses, cows, a good stock of provisions, arms, ammunition, etc., etc. They passed directly up the river, only stopping to take in wood and water, until they reached Prairie du Chien, at the mouth of the Wisconsin. Here they put their animals on shore, and remained 2 days. On the third day they re-embarked, and finally reached the St. Peters in safety. Their enterprise proved highly successful. They found the timber of the first quality, and the facilities for building mills much greater than they anticipated. The work went on very prosperously, and in a few months Mr. Lincoln had the satisfaction of launching his rafts on the headwaters of the Mississippi. They continued to prosecute their labors vigorously until winter set in, when a part of the workmen started for St. Louis, and a part of them remained to superintend the cutting of timber. During the winter, Mr. Lincoln and several of the workmen made frequent excursions in pursuit of game, which was very abundant, and their camp was one continued scene of festivity. The Indians brought in large quantities of furs, which Mr. Lincoln purchased for a mere trifle, and lined his cabins with them throughout, which rendered his rude huts very warm and comfortable. The whole party were in as hearty as bucks, and appeared to enjoy themselves exceedingly. About the 15th of January, 2 of the carpenters, who had been out in pursuit of a gang of wolves that had proved very troublesome, came into the camp and reported that they had seen a huge monster in the forest, on a branch of the Mississippi, having the form of a man, but much taller and stouter, covered with long hair, and of a frightful aspect. They stated that when first seen he was standing on a large log, looking directly at them, and the moment they raised their muskets he darted into the thicket and disappeared. They saw him again in about half an hour, apparently watching them, and when they turned towards him he again disappeared. Mr. Lincoln was at first disposed to think lightly of this matter, believing that the men might have been mistaken about the size and height of the object, or supposing it might have been the trick of the Indians to frighten them. He was informed, however, by some of the natives that such a being had often been seen on the St. Peter's and near the falls of the Mississippi, and they proposed to guide a party of the workmen to a bluff where it is thought he might be found. The men were all ready for an adventure, and arming themselves with rifles and hunting knives, they started for the bluff under the direction of Mr. Lincoln and the Indian guides. On the way, they were joined by several of the natives. The whole party numbered 23. They arrived at the bluff late on the afternoon of the 21st of January, and encamped in a cave or grotto at the foot of the hill. Early the next morning, 2 of the Indians were sent out to reconnoiter, and in about an hour returned and said they had seen the wild man on the other side of the hill. The whole party immediately prepared for the pursuit. Mr. Lincoln gave positive orders to the men not to fire upon him unless it should be necessary in self-defense, as he wished, if possible, to take him alive. The Indian stated that although a very powerful creature, he was believed to be perfectly harmless, as he always fled at the approach of men. While Mr. Lincoln was giving his men their instructions, the wild man appeared in sight. He ordered them to remain perfectly quiet, and taking out his pocket-glass, surveyed him minutely. He appeared to be about 8 or 9 feet high, very athletic, and more like a beast standing erect than a man. After satisfying himself with regard to the character of the creature, Mr. Lincoln ordered his men to advance. The Indians had provided themselves with ropes, prepared to catch wild horses, with which they hoped to ensnare and bind the creature, without maiming him. The instant the company moved towards the wild man, he sprung forward with a loud and frightful yell, which made the forest ring. The Indians followed close upon him, and Mr. Lincoln and his men brought up the rear. The pursuit was continued for nearly an hour, now gaining upon the object of their chase, now almost losing sight of him. The trees, however, were quite open and free from underbrush, which enabled them to make their way very rapidly. Whenever they came very near him, he started forward again with a yell and appeared to increase his speed. He finally darted into a thicket, and although they followed close and made much search, they were unable to find him. They then began to retrace their steps toward the place of encampment, and when within about a mile of the cavern, the wild man crossed their path, within 20 rods of the main body of the party. They immediately gave chase again and accidentally drove the creature from the forest into an open field or prairie. The monster appeared to be much frightened at this situation, and leaped forward, howling hideously. At length he suddenly stopped and turned upon his pursuers. Mr. Lincoln was then in the advance. Fearing that he might attack them or return to the woods and escape, he fired upon him and lodged a charge of buckshot in the calf of his leg. He fell immediately, and the Indians sprang forward and threw their ropes over his head, arms, and legs, and with much effort succeeded in binding him fast. He struggled, however, most desperately, gnashed his teeth, and howled in a frightful manner. They then formed a sort of litter of branches and limbs of trees, and placed him upon it, carried him to the encampment. A watch was then placed over him, and every effort made that could be devised to keep him quiet, but he continued to howl most piteously all night. Towards morning, 2 cubs, about 3 feet high and very similar to the large monster, came into camp and were taken without resistance. As soon as the monster saw them, he became very furious, gnashed his teeth, and howled, and thrashed about until he burst several of the cords, and came very near effecting his escape. But he was bound anew, and after that was kept most carefully watched and guarded. The next day he was placed on the litter and carried down to the mills on the St. Peter's. For 2 or 3 days, Mr. Lincoln says he refused to eat or drink, or take any kind of food, but continued to howl at intervals for an hour at a time. At length, however, he began to eat, but from that time his howls ceased, and he has remained stupid and sullen ever since. The cubs took food very readily, and became quite active and playful. Mr. Lincoln is a native of Boston, and some of the workmen engaged at his mills are from this city. He arrived here Saturday afternoon in the brig St. Charles, Stewart, master from New Orleans, with the wild man and the cubs, and they were all removed from the vessel that evening. By invitation, Mr. Lincoln, who is an old acquaintance, we went down to his rooms to examine his monster. He is a horrid-looking creature, and reminds us very strongly of the fabled satyrs, as we have pictured them in our own mind. He is about 8 feet 3 inches high when standing erect, and his frame is of giant proportions in every part. His legs are not straight, but like those of the dog and other 4-footed animals, and his whole body is covered with a hide very much like that of a cow. His arms are very large and long, and ill-proportioned. It does not appear from his manner that he has ever walked upon all fours. The fingers and toes are mere bunches, armed with stout claws. His head is covered with thick, coarse black hair, like the mane of a horse. The appearance of his countenance, if such it may be called, is very disgusting, nay, almost horrible. It is covered with a thinner and lighter coat of hair than the rest of the body. There is no appearance of eyebrows or nose. The mouth is very large and wide, and similar to that of a baboon. His eyes are quite dull and heavy, and there is no indication of cunning or activity about them. Mr. Lincoln says he is beyond dispute carnivorous, as he universally rejects bread and vegetables, and eats flesh with great avidity. He thinks he is of the orangutan species, but from what little we have seen, we are inclined to consider him a wild animal, somewhat resembling a man. He is, to say the least, one of the most extraordinary creatures that has ever been brought before the public from any part of the earth, or the waters under the earth, and we believe will prove a difficult puzzle to the scientific. He lies down like a brute, and does not appear to possess more instinct than common domestic animals. He is now quite tame and quiet, and is confined by a stout chain attached to his legs. This is the first creature of the kind, we believe, ever found in this continent. It was to be expected, however, that in penetrating the remote recesses of the New World, monsters would be found, and great natural curiosities brought to light, and it has been a matter of surprise to many that so little of the marvelous has ever been discovered. But we cannot tell what the wilds of the far northwest, or the shores of Lake Superior, the regions of the Rocky Mountains, and the vast territory of the Oregon may yet bring forth. It is Mr. Lincoln's intention to submit these animals to the inspection of the scientific for a few days, in order to ascertain what they are, and after that to dispose of them to some persons for exhibition. Mr. Lincoln himself will return to the St. Peter's in the course of 2 or 3 weeks. P.S. Mr. Lincoln informs us that he will exhibit the wild man and his cubs gratuitously this forenoon in the rear of No. 9 Elm Street. We presume our citizens will not be slow to take advantage of this offer. This ends the reading of Boston Daily Times. Wild man captured with 2 cubs, 1839, Monday morning, April 1st. And now, story number 2. The Demons of the Himalaya Mountains, an adventure in 1888, Northern India. August 31st, 1888. Here's the haunted hollow for you at last, and it looks certainly match its reputation, but it really is a striking bit of scenery, though perhaps not quite the sort of place to bring a lady to a nightfall. In truth, I had good reason to say so, for in all the grim chaos of giant mountains through which my wife and I had been working our way as best we might for the past 2 days, we had seen nothing so wild and gloomy as this. A dark and frightful chasm more than 1,000 feet in depth, and at least half a mile wide, yawned between 2 mighty ridges of bare black rock, so steep that even the hardy trees of the mountains could scarcely find space to cling to their towering sides. Along the brink of this ghastly gulf, a narrow ledge path, cut in the very face of the cliff, wound like a thread between the precipice above and the precipice below. Just at the spot where we were standing, the upper cliff made a deep curve inward, enclosing us in a kind of crescent midway between the 2 horns of which the lower cliff jutted out over the great void of blackness below in a sort of small platform. On its edge, the gaunt white skeleton of a blasted tree, dead, sapless, hideously distorted, thrust itself out from the precipice as if to just about plunge headlong into the gulf below. All this, seen beneath the red and angry glare of a storm sunset which was fast dying behind the mighty snow peaks of the upper Himalaya, had the wildest and ghostliest effect that you can well imagine. We were still looking wonderingly at this grim panorama, when there suddenly arose at no great distance from us a cry, such as, with all my experience of startling sounds, I had never heard before. Harsh, hideous, unearthly, yet mingled with the dreadful mockery of the sound of a human voice which made it doubly appalling. Now, this very spot had an evil name throughout the whole neighborhood. Native legends told that several mountain chiefs had been decoyed to this rock platform by their hereditary foes on the pretext of a friendly conference, and then slaughtered or hurled into the abyss. It was said that the last survivor of the doomed band had invoked upon his treacherous slayers, with his dying breath, the vengeance of the mountain demons, and native superstition held that the spirits of evil had heard the call, and still haunted this scene of treason and murder, which the boldest mountaineers shudderingly avoided after dark. For myself, if I had not much faith in the guardian demons of the spot, I thought it just the place to be haunted by wild beasts, and felt instinctively for my revolver the moment I heard the mysterious sound. But I felt in vain, for, being tired of carrying it about to no purpose, I had left it at our quarters just when it might at last have been of some use. Again the strange cry arose, louder and evidently nearer this time, but still with the same horrible parody of human call that had startled us before. One of the dreadful half-human monsters of German legend, scenting his prey in the gloomy depths of some primeval forest, might have uttered just such a cry as that. "That can't be a tiger, surely," said my wife, who had unluckily left her revolver behind likewise. "No tiger could ever make a sound like that," I answered. "I've heard their cry often enough. But whatever it may be, it's most likely something that won't be very good company in such a place, and at such an hour, so the sooner we're off the better." Scarcely had I finished speaking when a huge stone, coming apparently from the top of the cliff, struck with a tremendous crash right upon the path, barely a yard behind us, with such force as to dash up a thick cloud of dust all around it. "That stone must have been thrown," said I, "for a falling one would never strike so hard. If there is any fellow up there amusing himself by flinging rocks at us, we'd better give him a hint to leave off at once." I stepped forward accordingly and shouted with all my might in Hindustani to the supposed jester above us, spicing my challenge with one or two of those forcible native epithets which one picks up only too easily, I am sorry to say, in such a country as British India. My shout received a speedy and very startling answer. Hardly had I uttered it when a shrill scream broke forth overhead, followed by a horrible screeching laughter like the wild merriment of a maniac. These appalling sounds, coupled with the strange half-brutal cries that we had already heard, suggested to my mind a new and ghastly suspicion. Good heavens, I thought with a shudder, can there be a madman up there amongst those precipices? As if to answer my unspoken question, another scream broke forth, and a wild figure was seen leaping and dancing along the summit of the cliff. Then it suddenly descended the almost perpendicular face of the rock with such inconceivable agility that, to my bewildered eyes, it almost seemed to leap with one bound from the top to the bottom, and, turning a somersault, planted itself right in the center of the path, now as if to cut off our retreat, greeting us with gestures of hideous menace. In the rapidly deepening darkness it was not easy to make out what this frightful creature was like, but so far as we could see, it appeared to have the figure of a short, thick-set, deformed man with a huge, shaggy head, whose glaring eyes and gnashing teeth looked horribly unearthly amid the gloom. Our only chance now was apparently to slip away as quietly as possible in the opposite direction. But just then, as if to cut off our last hope, another monster of similar aspect issued from behind a projecting crag to our right, and a third came clambering up over the edge of the platform to our left. We were surrounded. But now, as my eyes grew used to the darkness, and I could see these goblins more plainly, I recognized their short, squat bodies, hairy faces, and long, misshapen arms for what they really were. The supposed demons were mountain apes, and I could hardly wonder that the simple natives should have mistaken them for devils, for Dante himself could have imagined nothing more truly diabolical. But this discovery, so far from lessening my anxiety, only made it greater. I knew well the vast strength and brutal ferocity of these formidable creatures, and felt that if they were to attack us, as they seemed disposed to do, our lives would not be worth a straw. Unarmed as we were, we had no means of fighting them, and as for attempt at flight, it did not need much thought to tell us what chance we had of outrunning or outclimbing a full-grown Himalayan ape. Hitherto, the brutes had contented themselves with chattering and grimacing, being apparently puzzled at our remaining so perfectly motionless. But this truce was not to last long. A stone hurled by one of the monsters with all his force suddenly whizzed within a few inches of my wife's face. The attack had begun. "Give me your matches, quick," said I, "and we'll make a torch of these dry sticks. Fire is the only thing to scare 'em." But before this could be done, the dilemma had solved itself in a very unexpected way. Another stone, flung with the force of a shoe by the brawny arm of the gentleman on our right, missed us by a hair's breadth, and plumped right into the broad, shaggy muzzle of his comrade on our left, making sad havoc of the latter's front teeth. Smarting with the pain, the injured jackal flew as fiercely as a tiger at his offending brother, who met him with equal energy, while number 3, by way of keeping the peace, fell furiously upon them both. In a trice, the whole 3 were rolling on the ground in a kind of living ball, tearing, gnashing, foaming, clawing, and awakening with their savage yells all the echoes of the mountain. "Now," I cried, seizing my wife's hand, "run!" We flew along the breakneck path at a pace which at any other time would have seemed to us quite impossible, but long after we had got out of sight of the field of action, the shrieks and howls of the combatants told us that the fight was still raging as furiously as ever. That story came from National Library of New Zealand, newzealand.govt.nz. Source: Paul Cropper via Dmitry Bayanov. October 2009. And now, story number 3. Washington County, Nashville, Illinois, July 2010. I'm going to tell you this story only once. I had never planned on telling it to anyone ever, but here it goes. My name is Floyd, and I'm 40 years old with no reason to make up a story like this. There's nothing to gain, nothing to lose, and I really am not trying to scare anyone. We all know there are many other things to be scared of in this world besides someone making up a crazy story about Bigfoot. I have read some really hard-to-believe stories about Bigfoot, but hey, whatever floats your boat. My encounter begins while on a fishing trip just south of Nashville, Illinois, at Washington County Lake. It was July 22nd, 2010. I decided to go catfishing. After loading up the boat and all my gear, I got to the ramp around 5:30 p.m. The sun was hot, so after putting the boat in, I headed for a cove on the northeast side of the lake where the trees shaded the water. I was anchored about 30 feet from the bank and enjoying the peace and quiet. I caught a mess of fish and decided to fish well into the night as the catfish was biting great. It was now about 11 p.m. and things started to stomp around in the woods. I figured it was deer or coons. I could hear the rustling around not far in the woods. It would make moving noises about every 10 to 15 minutes. I never really thought much of it and was more into catching fish than worrying about an animal in the bushes. The time passed, and I heard a splash that made a sound of a large rock being thrown into the water about 20 to 30 feet behind the boat. At first I thought someone was screwing around and threw a rock into the water. I looked at the clock. It was 1:27 a.m., now the 23rd. After thinking it over, I decided it had to be a fish because for someone to be that far back into the woods, they had to walk a good distance, and I would have noticed a light. Plus, as big as the sound of the splash was, they had to have to be Superman to have threw a large rock that far out into the water. I continued fishing and never heard any other noises, and after a bit, I forgot all about the splash. As the fishing died down around 3 a.m., I decided to pack it up and head for the dock. As I was pulling the anchors out, I heard a noise in the woods just from the bank, like something was startled when I stood up and pulled the anchors. I figured I spooked a deer bedding down. I was only able to run my trolling motor on my boat because the lake has a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit and my motor was bigger than 10 horses, so as I'm trolling back to the dock, I hear the noise of whatever I spooked in the woods moving along the edge of the wood line as I moved in the water. This went on for about 3/4 of a mile, and I was now about 100 yards from the dock. All around the dock, bait shop, and bank, there are street lights in the dock area, and the woods thin out to none. As I reached this area, the movement in the woods stopped. Well, now I was curious as to what the hell animal would follow me like that. I tied off the boat and walked up to the parking lot to get the truck when I heard a grunt sound. I opened the truck door and it grunted again. So I fired up the truck and shined my headlights toward the area where the grunt came from. To my surprise was a large set of yellow eyes in the woods. As I studied them, I could see them blinking and noticed they looked really high in the air, 8 feet or so. Not thinking anything fearful, I backed down the ramp and loaded the boat. After getting everything buttoned down and ready to head home, I got in the truck and headed up the ramp. I looked for the eyes in the same area and didn't see them. Leaving the lake consists of a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit and a winding road for a few miles. As I passed the check-in station close to the road, I heard a large bang like something hit the boat. So I stopped and got out to see if I had lost something. Everything looked fine. Nothing fell out, and as far as I could tell, nothing ran into the boat like a deer or whatever. So I got back into the truck. Before pulling off, I hear the noise again like something hit the boat. I hit the brake lights to light up the boat a bit and looked into the rear view. As I looked, I saw what looked like a very large man standing next to the boat. I was about to jump out and ask what the hell he was up to, when I got an eerie feeling and something just told me to drive. So I hit the gas with my eyes glued to the figure. As I took off, it started towards the truck, so I hit it, letting gravel fly. I was up to about 35 miles an hour when something hit the truck, making the truck shake. Well, now I was done messing around and said piss on the speed limit. I guess I lost it, and at what speed, I don't know. When I got to the highway, I got out to check the truck, and there was, and is still, a nice dent high on the passenger side bed of the truck. I went home, unloaded the boat, grabbed a shotgun, and headed back out there. I crept along those roads till dawn looking for whatever it was that hit my truck, and never seen a thing. I still fish there today, but not alone. Floyd Scott. This ends story number 3. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.